Using a cycle lane around what looked like a rather large obstacle.
Gets his head down, he's in a time trialing position.
This is the Domestiques, presented by Black Sheep Cycling.
Yes, it sure is. This is the Domestiques, presented by Black Sheep Cycling Apparel. I'm Mike Palmarès. It's so good to have you join us for another fresh edition of the world's greatest podcast. Wherever you're listening, well, I hope you're enjoying yourself, because we are. It's cycling central right now. It's the Tour de France. There's so much happening around the world of cycling, and it's so great to have you along. Well, we've got ourselves Matilda, who's back on terra firma. She's back in Australia. Tills, tell us about your day. Tell us about your last 48 hours since we last spoke.
Well, my day, Mike, started 1 hour ago at 4:15 a.m. So you guys have probably had a bit more exciting day than I have. But back in Australia, which is nice to be on home soil. And yeah, I've just been trying to consume as much as the tour as possible. I feel like we need a few. Then the tour is going to have a few down days. I thought today would be a bit of a transition day, but you know, there's too many teams that haven't had a win yet. So at the moment, it looks like every stage is going to be fireworks. And
one team that's really stood out for me, and maybe we can talk about this later on, is Astana. Now, Astana, I don't think have finished in the top 10. Not one rider has finished in the top 10 since the tour started. What does that tell me? Well, I dare not ask. But where are you, Hollywood? Oh, I'm glad you said that, not me, Hollywood.
Yeah, the Astana's clean now. That's why they're not winning. But anyway, I am in Imperia, and I had to have the other day off because I had sore shoulders from carrying you, Mike. But I'm back. I've had a day off, so I'm back. I rode the Cipressa today in 38 degrees, and I am feeling fantastic. Dressed in yellow, ready to go.
Now, I know that part of the world. It's a beautiful part of the world. It's where the Milan-San Remo finishes along the coastline there in Liguria. Tell us how beautiful it is. I know how beautiful it is, but just tell the viewers, paint a picture for us, Hollywood.
It was magnificent. We rode up there and I had goosebumps because Milan-San Remo is always one of my favourite classics. It's the best last 15 Ks of any race, in my opinion. I love it, and it was so good. We stopped at the graffiti post where it says Cipressa. We recorded a music video for a song I've got coming out with my mate Hot On here in Italy, and we had a great day, and it was beautiful. I took lots of videos, and I had a wonderful, wonderful day.
Hang on a sec. Have you got hidden talents? Are you a musician by night and a cyclist by day?
I pretty much do everything, Mike, as you would know. But yes, I've got a couple of songs on iTunes with Hoton, Hoton, my mate from Norway who speaks Italian. We're Instagram friends, and we met. I'm at his holiday place now, and we recorded a music video today during our ride. So yeah, basically do it all.
Well, I'm looking forward to that. Coming up in today's program, we've got a very special guest. I'm serious. We've got a very special guest. We've got a Tour de France rider, a former representative of Australia at the Olympic Games, a man who's won several races on the pro circuit, Pat Jonker. And I can't wait to hear his insights on how this Tour de France is unfolding. But let's talk about the Tour and what's happened over the last 48 hours. I tell you what, Jonas Vingegaard has captured the imagination of the Tour, and he's capturing the imagination of those watching him. But I tell you what, as far as Pogacar is concerned, the Slovenian cannot shake the man. What I saw yesterday on Alpe d'Huez was quite incredible. Pogacar tried to shake the Great Dane 3 times, twice on the slopes and once at the finish line, but he couldn't do it. Tills, what did you make of, first of all, yesterday's big showdown?
Yeah, I think I think we had the grand final the day before, so I think yesterday what we really saw was Jumbo-Visma control the race. You know, it was incredible that they hit Alpe d'Huez with their entire team. And when you look at the Jumbo team, there's so many riders in that team that on their own they could win on that. They're incredible cyclists individually. So I think we saw Jumbo's dominance yesterday. We saw incredible descending from Tom Pidcock. Like it's wild to think that on a stage like Alpe d'Huez, where the biggest topic was how well Tom Pidcock descended. He's a world champion mountain biker or gold medalist, and so he really showed that for yesterday. But I think it was more about the people yesterday.
It was fantastic,
and you were there,
Jules.
Mike. How was it on the
I
ground?
normally sit in a production truck. I have done so over the last 26 years in the confines of four walls, watching the images, just like you do at home, wherever you're watching around the world. But on my first occasion on the mountain, I was in the little village of Huez, which is about 4 kilometres down from the down from the top. And I was there with the Danes. I was there with the Norwegian, the Germans, the Dutch. And the atmosphere was just amazing. And to see, literally, I would say 50,000 cyclists, recreational, elite, you name it, people from all walks of life, from different backgrounds, fat and fit, climbing that mountain. It was just cycling heaven. And I got a real buzz out of that. The sun was shining, it was quite warm, and we were all waiting in anticipation for the peloton to arrive. And a lot of us were sitting there hours on end, just waiting and enjoying the party atmosphere. But I got to say, for the Norwegians and the Dutch, they arrived some 7 days earlier, and a lot of them were laying flat on their back after many drinks, a week long party. But look, for me, it was a great moment, and to see that showdown between Vingegaard and Pogacar, it was brilliant. And to see Pidcock just hang on to that lead from bottom to top of Alpe d'Huez, well, I didn't think he could do it. 22 years of age. They're saying that he will win a Grand Tour, if not the Tour de France, in the near future. But I want to get your thoughts, Hollywood. What did you make of it all? What did you think of Pidcock, his descending skills, and the showdown between number 1 and 2?
Yeah, he was. Apparently, I think he was the youngest winner of Alpe d'Huez, which is impressive. But like Matilda said, the day before, the sort of foreplay was better than the actual deed. The day before was a big one for me. I was like cheering a Melbourne Cup rider home. I was just up on the feet when he attacked. I couldn't believe I was seeing it. It was so exciting. But yesterday was still a great stage, and Pidcock was amazing. And it was. I was waiting for Pogacar to attack, and he attacked, and I'm like, come on, Vingegaard, go! And he was sticking on his wheel. I'm thinking, is the elastic band going to snap? And it didn't, and it calmed down. Then bang, he went again, and it was. It's just, as I keep saying, like a broken record. It has been such a bloody good tour.
Yeah, it sure has. Look, it's Saturday, July the 16th, and what we saw just hours ago was stage 13. Mads Pedersen, the Dane. Now, he is the third Dane in the last 4 stages to enjoy a victory in the Tour de France. Denmark is just all over this Tour de France right now. It started in Copenhagen 2 weeks ago, and Vingegaard leads this tour. And we've had Magnus Kort win a stage, and now Mads Pedersen along with Vingegaard. A breakthrough victory for the 26-year-old Dane today, stage 13. A world champion just 3 years ago. And, it's taken a long time for Mads Pedersen to win a stage. A great stage today, Tills.
Yeah, I got a few snippets of it, but I think, again, they were thinking it would be a transition stage. It would be pretty cruisy, and they did over 50k an hour for the first hour. So, there's too many teams that haven't had a win yet. If you do not get a win at the Tour de France, it's pretty much a failure and a very expensive exercise. So, yeah, just every team was in it trying to bring back that break. But absolute kudos to Mads Pedersen. He was the very first to attack. He was he was driving that break, and it's not always easy to win as the key sprinter out of a break, just because everyone's looking at you the entire time. You have to do twice as much work. People don't want to help you get to the line. So it was incredible to see him come across the line. I think he was trying so hard in Copenhagen. So, and I think he's just a great guy. So to see him get up, it's a win for the people as well.
Hollywood, we didn't see you. We didn't talk to you the last time
Hollywood?
we presented the Domestiques. So what do you make of the showdown between 1 and 2 on the GC?
Oh, it's exciting. Like, I'm going for the underdog, which is Vingegaard. I just want a good race, and we're seeing a good race. 2 top quality riders duking it out, with Geraint Thomas just sort of lingering back there in third, just sort of not going with the attacks, but just riding his own tempo back to the wheel. So, look, it's a great race, and what else can you say? It's just been one of the best tours in recent memory for me, that's for sure. And like everyone else, I watch it every year, but this one has been really good, really good.
Well, one of the drawbacks from today's stage was the was the bad luck of Caleb Ewan. He's been hampered by a bad season. He pulled out of the Giro on stage 1. He's still in this race, but after receiving a big knock midway through the race, ending up in a barrier, it doesn't look good. Caleb has been fraught with disappointment, and it's unfortunate because, wind the clock back some 12 months and he was winning stages for fun. And now he doesn't get any support at all by that team, which really is surprising.
Yeah, they have tried to get around him, I think, particularly the last few stages to get him over the climbs. Like, someone think of the sprinters during these incredible mountain climbs, how they have to pretty much suffer through the entire day and then sprint the next day. Is just awful. But I think it's getting harder for Caleb just because the pressure is building, and that makes it difficult to sprint and to win. And Caleb's someone that wins when he's at his happiest and he's free and he's, at his best. So it is going to get harder and harder, I think, for him to get up there.
Yeah, I think he's it's just not his tour. Some you got to know when to hold him and know when to fold him, and he's just not. It's just not his year or not his tour. Look, there's really only one proper sprint stage left, which is the last one. I don't think you'll win that. I'd probably just go home if I was him. Forget about it.
Yeah. Well, there's always the Vuelta, and he's still young.
I know,
he's only 28. He's only young. He's still 28 years of age. All right, you're listening to the Domestiques, presented by Black Sheep Cycling Apparel. Let's bring in our special guest now. Patrick Jonker was a professional cyclist for a number of years back in the 1990s and early 2000s. He represented the Spanish team Once. He also represented Rabobank and also US Postal. And that's the team that everybody wants to ask Patrick about, US Postal. Good buddies with the man with the initials LA. But apart from that, Patrick finished 12th overall in the Tour de France in 1996. So he's got credentials. He also, I think, won the Tour de Sud, correct me if I'm wrong, Paddy, and another big World Tour event in the 1990s. You finished your career by winning the Tour Down Under in 2004. After crossing the finish line victorious, triumphant, you said, that's enough for me. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for Patrick Jonker.
Thank you, Paddy. Mike. That's a great intro. Best intro I've had all year.
Only for you, mate. Only for you. Now, I'll just cut to the chase. Sure, you rode with Once. Sure, you rode with Rabobank. But we want to know about your experience at US Postal. Tell us about it.
Oh, for me, all the teams I rode with, I was fortunate enough to ride with the best teams in the world. I started with Peter Post and went on to Once, Rabobank, but definitely spending a lot of time with Lance Armstrong, US Postal Service, was another level. I think, personally I get along well with him. The way he approached life was waking up every day as an angry man out to prove to the world that he has to win at all costs. So, these people, Lance is not the only one. There are a lot more athletes like him out there in the world, and they just wake up angry. They had difficult upbringing, difficult childhood. Usually they come from broken home. And if you look at the history of Tour de France winners, you're not going to ever find a Tour de France winner that comes from a great family with a lot of money. They all come from difficult upbringings. Egan Bernal, even still to today, they usually have a story to tell. And Lance's story, well, that's a very long story to tell. But to be honest, I call it the dark ages. That was the dark ages of the cycling world. And for a decade or so, it was very, very dark. And, I always say, well, the guys who got second and third never complained.
Pat, can I ask you a question? You were part of that dark period. You were part of that era. What did you see? And now tell us the truth. What did you see behind closed doors?
Oh, look, for me, it was very disappointing. I mean, I remember you standing at the finish line often, and you would recall that I never really wanted to talk much. I didn't really want to say much. I kind of kept to myself. But I think for a lot of riders, it was very frustrating and a very, emotionally dark period as well, because, we're all working hard and we're all trying to do the best we possibly can. And I think, for a lot of riders during the 90s who had a hematocrit close to 50%, then it was almost like a career-ending biological part that you could do nothing about. But in hindsight, I would have done things differently, and but you can't really turn back time. But I think overall the memories are good, even though it was a very dark period. And I think there's a lot of collateral. You wouldn't say it's collateral damage, but I'm so happy to see the Tour de France today, and I look at the riders today, and I shared the hotel with movie staff for 2 nights and spoke to the director. But to be honest, everyone is so happy that they can say that today's cycling is clean, and we see that with the Podge blowing up. Everyone thought this is what cycling needs. He's human. I think the days of seeing superhuman performances is bad for cycling. We don't want to see somebody in yellow for 2-3 weeks. We don't want to see superhuman performances. Those were the dark ages, and it's been great. It's been great to watch. Really loving every day, and like Hollywood, I'm going for the Great Dane, but it's not over yet from a long shot.
Yeah, definitely.
And so, what's your thoughts on the tour so far, Pat? Vingegaard going to be able to hold it all the way?
Visma, which is the team I used to ride for 3 years. So Rabobank evolved into Jumbo Visma. So I know the directors really well. I know Franz Marstens, Grisha. I know all the guys really well, and they just not wanting to jinx it. They've been in a situation where they thought they may potentially win the Tour de France, and it's a team that's been around for a very long time, so it'll be over 20-odd years. And if you calculate Jan Raas's era before that, it's been around for a long time. They've never won the Tour de France, and they know they're probably looking at the weather report. Well, weather is going to play a big role in the outcome of this year's Tour de France, because everyone knows the Podge doesn't really do well in 35-degree plus temperatures. So the guys at Jumbo Visma are looking at the weather reports. They know that Hautacam is coming. 3 Pyrenees stages that are crucial. But in particular, the battle on Hautacam will be the outcome of this year's Tour de France. Jumbo Visma are hoping for hot weather. The Podge and his boys are really hoping for a cooler climate. But it's not over yet. The Podge is a superstar, and he'll go down fight. And don't forget Ineos. Ineos have got 2 riders within 3 minutes, and Ineos don't care about the podium. They really don't care. They're there to win, and they'll be doing some out of the ordinary strategies and attacks with Pidcock and Geraint in such fine form. They will rather lose a podium spot and not be in the top 5 if there's a small chance they could potentially crack both the Great Dane and the Podge. There's a lot of exciting stages coming up.
Hey, Pat, what do you make of the young guys that are dominating the world circuit right now? I mean, in your day, they say you had to be in your late 20s or early 30s. You've got Egan Bernal. You've got Pidcock, who won the stage yesterday. You've got Pogacar and Vingegaard. These guys are in their early to mid-20s. What do you make of all this?
Yes, so, I think Hollywood tapped on it a little bit earlier. What that indicates is that the sport's clean. It's like in an early 1980s, right, when Laurent Fignon came along as a 22-year-old. So what it's saying, in my era, which was the Dark Ages, we could say the Dark Ages were about almost 2 decades of darkness, where it took a young rider who had no chance, okay? They had to wait until their late 20s, early 30s. And now we're seeing what we saw in the early 80s, and we saw this in the late 60s. We saw this with Eddie Merckx in 69, and we saw this in 82, 83 with Laurent Fignon. If you're super talented, you're gifted, you've got Mother Nature's gift of a big heart, big lungs, and you've got the mental aptitude. As a 22-year-old, you can be in the running for win the Tour de France, which is completely telling the cycling world and experienced people like me who've been following cycling since the 70s. The sport has been run on bread and water and some mineral, some variety possibly. But it's a great thing to see. So we want to see 22-year-olds win the Tour de France. Take you back to the era of Laurent Fignon, who won the Tour de France 3 times and before he was 30. So it's great. It's really good to see. Good to see that.
Hey, Pat, just talking about what you're doing right now. You're heavily involved as a South Australian with the Tour Down Under, and you have been for many, many years. Now, the course for next year's Tour has been released. It's very fresh. It's very exciting. It's very different to what we've seen over the last 20-odd years. Stuart O'Grady is the new race director, and he's already making an impact. I think next year's Tour, after a 3-year hiatus, is going to be huge, and many people from all over Australia, all over the world, I expect will make a beeline to Adelaide. Are you as excited as I am?
Yeah, absolutely. I hope that all our listeners come down to Adelaide to see the Tour Down Under next January. Yeah, absolutely. You know, Stuart O'Grady, he's not going to follow or copy Mike Turner. Stuart O'Grady is not Mike Turner. A finish on top of Mount Lofty. Mount Lofty's the highest for the locals in Adelaide. Know Mount Lofty as one of our stomping grounds, as our biggest hill in South Australia.
That's for the final stage as well. No more Willunga.
Yeah, I know there are some. When I read all the blogs and I read people's comments, and there are a lot of people not happy that it's not on Willunga Hill. But got to remember, Alpe d'Huez is not on the Tour de France every year as well. So I think what Stuart's going to do is, follow a little bit in the Tour de France footsteps. We won't have Willunga Hill each year. Maybe every second year there'll be Willunga Hill, just like Alpe d'Huez, Mont Ventoux, those iconic climbs. It'll be a special occasion every other year, but to have the finish on top of Mount Lofty, our highest, our biggest berg in South Australia, you could say, and a very popular climb, to have the finish out there will be very spectacular. And the time trial as well, that's never been done before. We've never had a time trial. They'll be using ordinary bikes, so there'll be no time trial bikes, and it'll be along the river for sure. It'll be a real great spectacle to watch. I think Stuart's done a great job, and also putting his stamp, O'Grady stamp on the course. And I see Stuart often, and I say, man, a little bit of gravel will be nice. So hopefully we'll see a gravel stage one day, a bit of a Reuther in Adelaide.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think it's nice and fresh and tills, and I think the reason why it's a late start for the prologue on day one is to allow the women's tour down under to have its own identity for the very first time.
Yeah, absolutely. Being a women's World Tour event, it's a big
yeah,
for us.
Yeah, Tour Down Under's always led the way in equal prize money, equal coverage, giving the women's tour its own space. So it's fantastic that it's certainly, for the Australians, their absolute number one event. And so, yeah, I'd hopefully be able to get there myself, but we'll see. And so, Pat, how do you think the rest of the few stages will play?
The transition stages in my time were stages to recover and, kind of try and find your legs after 3 brutal mountain stages. There's none of that at this Tour de France. They don't have, for us in my era, we know we have a piano day. Piano day is an easy day. You have an espresso, you relax and don't get too flustered. The guys don't know that anymore. There's a lot of stress now. When you look at the riders and speak to the riders, during my period of racing, we'll have times where we could relax and talk and joke. They're having the first opening hour of 50 kilometres per hour, and that's not unusual. 50 kilometres per hour every day, every stage. Now, looking at the stages, we've got 3 transition stages coming up. Looking at the weather report, it's going to be brutally hot. We're going to the hottest part of France. It's going to be absolute. The tarmac will be melting. They'll be covered with little bits of tarmac. Look, it was going to be aggressive all the way to Paris because so many teams, like mentioned before, so many teams have not yet succeeded. And these teams have got big $1 million budgets and the sponsors are expecting a result. So it's just going to be on like Donkey Kong until Paris. We're not going to see any easy days.
Hey, Pat, I'm glad you said earlier that you found it difficult to talk to me during your time as a professional rider in the Tour de France. I thought it was me. But it wasn't me. It was you, wasn't it?
Yeah. I rode the Tour de France when there was no TV. No one in Australia knew about the Tour de France really until SBS came along. And there's Mike Tomalaris. And, fresh smile and you're full of enthusiasm. And there'll be often times when I wasn't so enthusiastic and I was a little bit, down and out because I knew what was going on. And, I was getting dropped by some fat sprinters from Italy who normally couldn't climb out of bed in the morning, and all of a sudden they're smashing up Hortocam at 400 watts. And, the guys, the insiders knew what was going on. But you can't really go, hey, Tomo, mate, there's some bad shit going on. I can't really say that, could I, Tomo?
I was in England at the time covering the European Football Championships when I was summoned to cross the channel and go to the town of Den Bosch where the tour started. And the first person I spoke to as a reporter of the Tour de France in my very first year was Patrick Jonker. And here we are, some 27 years later almost. We're talking again for different reasons. But I remember I asked your team director at the time, I can't remember who it was, the Once Spaniard, team director, and I said, look, I want to speak to the Aussie, Patrick Jonker. Sure, he's got NED after his name. You rode with a Dutch licence, but he knew you were an Australian. You've got Dutch heritage, of course, and German heritage. But it took you a long time to climb down those stairs and speak to little Tomo, fresh-faced with a microphone, who knew jack about cycling.
Yeah, you had great
So what took you so long?
I remember that. You had great hair.
I did.
Yeah, you had really...
Yeah, I had a mullet.
I was really, really, really jealous of your hair, you know. Coming from SBS, we thought, you'd be more a football journalist, but I think a lot of the Australian cyclists really appreciated your enthusiasm and love for the sport. Cycling is a really difficult sport to come into if you haven't grown up with it, and I think, you'd adapted really, really well, and... I think for a lot of the Aussies, there was a time where Phil Anderson was retiring, and it was kind of an era where we didn't have any Australians perform at the level they are today. Even though for the Aussies, we've had a lot of bad luck this tour with Jack Haig and, crashing out again. But I think all I can say really is the future for Australian cycling at the Tour de France is going to be so exciting for the next 5 to 10 years. In the period I rode in, that mid-90s era, the era before Cadel Evans and O'Grady McEwen, was kind of, like a little bit of a lull before all the excitement. So, but I'm still just very happy to have been a part of it.
Pat, a question: when you were getting dropped by fat sprinters up the climbs, did you ever be tempted to get on the gear and join everyone else when you were getting dropped up the hills by the sprinters? You're getting a bit depressed. Did you ever think, stuff it, I'm gonna get on it?
Look, absolutely. Like, in our world, at the Tour de France world, basically we're all come from working class families that don't have a dollar to their name. You'll never see anyone successful at the Tour de France who comes from a wealthy family. If you come from a family of millionaires, you're not going to have any success at the Tour de France. It will remain always a jungle. So, morals and ethics and all that, we can't even spell that. We don't know what that's all about. And, so we do absolutely everything we possibly can to succeed at whatever cost. There's rules and regulations. You look at what you can take and what you can't take, and then you push it to the limits. But for some people, though, and there's several Aussies and several other people out there, it wasn't 100% of people taking a lot of drugs during a particular period of time, because if your hemoglobin hematocrit is naturally at the limit of 50%, well, then you can only be sticking with your Weet-Bix and Baroccas because you're already at the limit, where some people biologically have a hematocrit of 38, 42. Well, then it's party time. But luckily, the UCI caught on quickly, and to be honest, the change in cycling happened when, to be honest, for all the cycling people like myself have been around for a long time. When Cadel Evans won the Tour de France, that's really when cycling changed. It was great to have an Aussie force that change in the world of cycling, and Cadel Evans was, in everyone's mind, the person that everyone who knows Cadel, the first really bread and water and natural, who won it all naturally.
Well, Pat, we had Dave Sanders on the Domestiques just a few nights ago, and you said just moments ago that Cadel Evans changed things for the better in Australian cycling. But Dave Sanders was very critical of the Australian cycling system, which has gone the other way. So it told me that people like Cadel, Richie Port, and the riders since Cadel's tremendous triumph have had to sort of fend for themselves without the support of the authorities from our country. What does that tell you?
Yeah, true. I agree with Dave Sanders, and a lot of people agree. I'm sure everyone who at the moment is in the early teens or in early 20s and aspire to follow in the footsteps of the Tour de France Aussie pros. There's no real pathway at the moment. So, I think that Australian cycling is just going through a difficult period at the moment, and we've had some changes in the organisation, and I think we should give these people a chance, give these people a few years to hopefully change what's going on in cycling in Australia. And I believe the next few years we will have a lot of success at the Tour de France. You have a look at how many riders we have at the moment who are all under the age of 30. Ben O'Connor, Jai Hindley, Haig, Stora are all under 30, and especially Jai is 26 years old, a potential Tour de France winner. I believe when someone like Jai comes to the Tour de France next year and is a serious podium contender, that it'll increase the popularity of the sport once again in Australia, and hopefully Cycling Australia can change a few things and make some better pathways for our youngsters to actually get here and race the Tour de France.
Yeah, totally agree with you. Look, we've got to wrap it up now, but it's good to know that you remember my hair. When I grow up, I want to have hair like Hollywood.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's going to happen. I've lost it all. Hollywood, how do you keep your hair so beautiful?
Well, before we talk about my beautiful hair, I just want to know. Yeah, it's real, of course, but we definitely know you're clean, because I'm hearing reports you're getting dropped day after day on the bike style tours. Pat, you're on there. Is there any truth in this?
Look, Mike's getting better by the day. I don't know what he's doing. I don't know what. I think we should have testing on bikes.
Look, Hollywood. Hollywood, don't look at the stats. Don't look at the stats, Hollywood, because we're there to look after our guests. We stop and start. Isn't that right, Pat? All right. Good night to Patrick Jonker. Bye for now, Tills, and also to you, Hollywood. And thanks for listening wherever you are all over the world. The Domestiques will be back very soon.
Using a cycle lane around what looked like a rather large obstacle.
Gets his head down, he's in a time trialing position.
This is the Domestiques, presented by Black Sheep Cycling.